What's going on, friends? Welcome back to College Sports Corner. Hope you're having a great weekend. Hope you're off today. Luckily, I am. We've had some great football this weekend, starting with Thursday. We're going to go over all that. Had some surprises, had some upsets, had some crazy things happen. Last few days have been pretty crazy here in college football. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good opening weekend, even though we had what they call week zero last week. This first full weekend is pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. We're going to go over all this stuff. We got some news items to go over first. So let's get to that, and we'll get to all these games that were played. Hey, 12-team playoff coming. They're saying 2026 is probably when it's going to happen. When this whole football playoff started several years ago, they started with 4 teams. I figured by now we would be to 8 teams or 12 teams. I figured they're going to slowly build it. They never did. And a lot of people are against it. A lot of people are for it. I am for it because if you go back over the last few years and look at the final rankings, well, not the final rankings, but the final playoff rankings before everything starts, we'd have had some pretty damn good matchups over the last several years. Finally, they're going to do it. They're waiting until I think what they say till the contract finally ends. They say maybe we'll get it before 2026, but most of them are agreeing it's not going to happen until 2026. But hey, at least they're doing it. As college football fans, with only 4 teams in the playoff, I feel we're getting ripped off. Can you imagine basketball or even baseball playoffs only having 8 teams in the whole playoff thing? I mean, it was just 4 teams. It was a start, but why it didn't progress, I don't know. But we're finally getting it, so thank goodness for that. Ohio State's Jackson Smith Najgba, I think that's how you say his name, but I'm probably butchering it. Hamstring injury in the Notre Dame game last night, or 2 nights ago. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. Last night, defensive lineman for LSU, Mason Smith, injured himself while celebrating a play. No update, but an MRI is scheduled for that. And finally, adding insult to injury, if you saw the Virginia Tech Old Dominion game, Virginia Tech lost that game. And not only did they lose the game, but somebody stole a bunch of stuff out of the Virginia Tech players' lockers during that game. I don't know. I guess they're stealing bling or jewelry, whatever. I don't know. But that sucks for them. They lost and they got their stuff stolen. All right. Let's get to it. Got a lot of stuff to go over here. Go back to Thursday. Overtime game. Akron 30. St. Francis, Pennsylvania 23. Akron quarterback Irons threw 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wiley, 21 rushes, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And receiver Jaquez Lewis had 7 catches, 99 yards for a touchdown. Tennessee, 59, Ball State 10. Boy, Tennessee came out on fire. I know it's Ball State and everything, but they look very, very good. Tennessee was winning 38-0 at the half. Hooker, 18 for 25, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he rushed for 2 touchdowns. So it looks like Hooker might be a pretty good weapon for Tennessee. He showed flashes of brilliance last year, but man, he just looked really, really good. Like I said, it's Ball State, but hey, you got to start somewhere, huh? Let's see, another overtime game. FIU 38, Bryant 37. Bryant was actually winning 16-6 at the half. FIU scored 24 points in the fourth quarter. Bryant didn't score any in the third quarter, but they did score 14 in the fourth, but too little too late. Number 12, Oklahoma State, 58. Central Michigan, 44. Oklahoma State had 521 total yards. Central Michigan had 544 yards in that one. Sanders for Oklahoma State, 28 for 41, 406 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also rushed for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. Johnson had 6 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown. Central Michigan's Richard, 36 for 49, 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he threw an interception. Toledo 37, poor little Long Island nothing. Toledo had 442 total yards in that game. Long Island only had 114 total yards in that one. Central Florida 56, South Carolina State 10. Central Florida had 302 passing yards. South Carolina State only had 56 passing yards. 295 rushing yards for Central Florida. Only 35 rushing yards for South Carolina State. South Carolina State ends up with 91 total yards in that game. I mean, that's man. Let's see, Backyard Brawl back on after a few years of wherever it went. Number 17, Pitt 38, West Virginia 31. Slovis for Pitt, 16 for 24, 308 yards, touchdown. Rushing was hammered, 16 rushes, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Wayne had 89 receiving yards. Defensive back Devonshire, pick 6 with under 3 minutes left in the game. West Virginia's Daniels, 22 for 39, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Donaldson had 7 rushes for 125 yards and a touchdown. Ford Wheaton, 9 catches, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Pitt outthrew West Virginia, but West Virginia outrushed Pitt in this one. Pitt had 384 total yards. West Virginia had 404 total yards in that one. Wake Forest 44, VMI 10. Wake Forest ended up with 506 total yards. VMI 222 total yards in that one. Mitch Griffs for Wake Forest, who's in for Sam Hartman, who's out with a still don't know what his injury is about or anything, but he was out. 21 for 29, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, so not too bad for him. Turner ran for 100 yards on 13 carries for 2 touchdowns for Wake Forest. UAB 59, Alabama A&M 0. Hopkins 13 for 18, 191 yards, touchdown and a rushing touchdown for UAB. Northern Illinois 34, Eastern Illinois 27. Northern Illinois 376 total yards. Eastern Illinois actually had more total yards, 443. They ended up losing the game. Missouri 52, Louisiana Tech 24. Cook was 16 for 26, 193 yards and 61 rushing yards and a TD from Missouri. Minnesota 38, New Mexico State 0. Minnesota's Morgan 13 for 19, 174 yards, 22 rushing yards and 2 TDs in that one. Ibrium 21 rushes, 132 yards, 2 TDs in that one. Mexico State really didn't do much. This was a good one here. I watched this one. Penn State 35, Purdue 31. Pretty good Big Ten battle the whole night. Penn State's Clifford, 20 for 37, 282 yards, 4 touchdowns in that one. He also rushed for a touchdown. Singleton, 31 rushes, 10 carries. Tinsley, 7 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Purdue's O'Connell, 30 for 59, 365 yards and a touchdown. Doru, 15 rushes, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. Jones had 12 catches, 153 yards, and a touchdown for Purdue. Great game. Both teams threw the ball well. It's kind of back and forth all night. Rushing game wasn't all that good for either team. It was mostly through the air for that one. Penn State had 98 rushing yards, and Purdue only had 61. So it was all through the air in that one. Really good game, though. I enjoyed that one. Arizona State 40, Northern Arizona 3. Fresno State 35, Cal Poly 7. Hainer for Fresno State, 370 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. San Jose State 21, Portland State 17. That leads us to Friday. Eastern Michigan 42, Eastern Kentucky 34. The game we just talked about, Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech 20-17. Virginia Tech had all their stuff stolen out of their lockers during the game. That sucks. Old Dominion have 253 total yards, and Virginia Tech actually have 387 total yards. So that's kind of crazy there. Michigan State 35, Western Michigan 13. Michigan State's Thorne 12 for 24, 233 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. Berger 16 rushes, 120 yards, and a touchdown for the Spartans. And Coleman had 4 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Michigan State 430 total yards. Western Michigan 334 total yards in that game. William and Mary 41. Charlotte 24. Little FCS William and Mary pull the upset there. Duke 30. Temple 0. Another one that was kind of entertaining. Wasn't all fireworks, but still. Indiana 23. Illinois 20. Basilick for Indiana, 28 for 52, 330 yards and a touchdown. He led Indiana from its own 25 with 2:16 left in this game, and down 20-16 on a 75-yard drive, topped off by Shivers running it in for a touchdown from 1 yard out. Let's see. For Illinois, Brown ran for 199 yards, becoming the first Illinois player to start the season with consecutive 100-yard games since 1944. Pretty cool. DeVito threw 2 touchdown passes in this game. Wasn't a pretty game. Plus all the second half officiating reviews kind of slowed the game down. It's like the second half took 15, 20 minutes longer than it should have with all the reviews going on. So it is what it is. Bielema looking to build that Illinois program back. Indiana trying to keep their success going. I know they had a bad year last year, but overall, it was an interesting game. Like I said, not too many fireworks, but pretty cool. Look at Kansas, man. They won a game. 56-10 over Tennessee Tech. Good for them. Maybe they can build on that. TCU beat Colorado 38-13. Brings us to Saturday. Start off the day. Maryland 31, Buffalo 10. Tua from Maryland, 24 for 34, 290 yards, interception in that one. Look at UConn. UConn wins 28-3 over Central Connecticut State. Turner had 2 touchdown passes in that game. Michigan, number 8 Michigan, just all over Colorado, 51-7. They started McNamara in this one, 9 for 18, 136 yards, a touchdown. Corum, 13 rushes for 76 yards and a touchdown. Edwards had 12 rushes for 64 yards and a touchdown. And Wilson had 2 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown in that one. Colorado State, Millen 16 for 20, 137 yards, touchdown and interception in that one. Delaware beats Navy 14-7. NC State had a little trouble with East Carolina. They win by 1, 21-20. NC State's Leary was 17 for 33, 211 yards, touchdown and interception. Eastern Carolina Allers, I think that's how you say his name, Allers, was 25 for 41, 267 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 picks in that game. Rutgers beat Boston College by 1, 22-21. This game here, Iowa 7, South Dakota State 3. South Dakota State's a damn good FCS team. They went to the championship game a couple years ago, always in the playoffs. I actually thought they would beat Iowa because we've seen Iowa how they start off slow on offense. It's like every game they start off slow, sluggish, and sometime during the game they finally get it going. So I really thought South Dakota State would beat them. But the Iowa defense, they kind of held their own. Iowa's Petrus was 11 for 25, 109 yards. He threw an interception. Williams, 24 carries, 72 yards. Bryce the fourth had 68 receptions, or 68 receiving yards, I'm sorry. South Dakota State's Gronowski, 10 for 26, 87 passing yards. Davis had 50 rushing yards on 18 carries. Like I said, both offenses struggled. The defenses played great in this one, especially the Jackrabbits. Their pass rush is pretty phenomenal. I mean, they're all over Petrus. Um, Iowa, they got their points by 2 safeties and a field goal. They got a lot of work to do, especially when they get into Big Ten play. Not so sure they're gonna. With what I saw Saturday, uh, man, they might be lucky to make a bowl game, but we'll see. Iowa had 166 total yards. South Dakota State had 127 total yards. So that shows you how great the defense has played in this one. Wild one. North Carolina 63, App State 61. North Carolina's made 24 for 35, 352 yards, 4 touchdowns, rushed for 76 yards, and he rushed in a touchdown. Pettaway and Hampton had rushing touchdowns for North Carolina. Pesor, 8 catches, 92 yards for a touchdown. Jones had 5 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown. Appalachian State's Bryce, 25 for 40, 361 yards, 6 touchdowns in this one, and he also threw an interception, but hell. Noel, 14 carries, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Davis had 6 catches, 72 yards and a touchdown. 5 other receivers for Appalachian State also had touchdown catches. 664 total yards and 9 touchdowns. This game was 28-21 at the half. Appalachian State was actually up, I believe, 14-7 or so in the first quarter. North Carolina outscored them 13-0 in the third. That helped. Appalachian State outscored North Carolina 40-22 in the fourth. Wild, crazy game. Defense was kind of optional in this one. I think the Tar Heels, they got scared in this one, but they pulled it out. So crazy. Virginia 34, Richmond 17. Virginia's Armstrong, 21 for 33, 246 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. He also rushed for 105 yards and a touchdown. Air Force 48 and Northern Iowa 17. This is another crazy one. Texas A&M 31, Sam Houston 0. There's a 3-hour weather delay. College Station is right up the road from here, and it rained all over this whole region all day Saturday. It's crazy, and I can see why it got delayed. King for Texas A&M, 20 for 31, 363 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. When Max Johnson transferred from LSU to A&M, I was like, all right, they're going to have a damn good quarterback, because Max Johnson's a great quarterback. It's just the rest of the team around him at LSU just couldn't get anything done. Well, then they announced Haynes King won the starting job. I was like, all right, well, I only saw him for a game and a half last year, and that first one he threw 3 interceptions. Had trouble with Kent State. So I was like, all right. Well, right up until the rain delay, I was like, how the hell did this guy beat out Max Johnson? So I'll understand. I'll understand it. Maybe Jimbo knows, and the coaches know something the rest of his fans don't know, because there are a lot of people on social media saying, how the heck did this guy beat out Max Johnson? So Max Johnson actually did come in. He did play a little bit, had some decent numbers, but yeah, it's some of these people picking A&M to. Well, I know Desmond Howard picked them to go to the playoff. I know it's just the first game, so we'll have to see how it goes. I don't know. Sometimes it's really tough being an A&M fan. Iowa State 42, Southeast Missouri State 10. Deckers for Iowa State, 293 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Pretty good day for him. UCLA 45, Bowling Green 17. UCLA's Thompson Robinson, 298 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Sherbinot, 21 rushes, 111 yards for a touchdown. Arizona, look at Arizona, 38. San Diego State 20. San Diego State, they're a good team. So I actually didn't think they would lose to Arizona, but they did. De Laura for Arizona, 299 passing yards, 4 touchdowns on that one. Poor Beth Ann Cookman, Miami all over them, 70-13. Van Dyke for Miami, 193 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Parrish, 14 rushes for 108 yards and 3 touchdowns for them. Franklin had 78 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns for the Hurricanes. And let's see, Restrepo, 5 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown for Miami. Arkansas 31, Cincy 24. I knew this would be a tough game for Arkansas. KJ Jefferson was 18 for 26, 223 yards and 3 touchdowns in this one. Also rushed for 62 yards and had a touchdown. Sanders ran for 117 yards on 20 carries. Knox had 6 catches for 75 yards. Cincinnati's Bryant, 26 for 43, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Arkansas ended up with 447 total yards. Cincinnati, 436 total yards. Yeah, I knew that was going to be a tough game for Arkansas, but hell, they pulled it out. Wild one in San Antonio. This is an interesting game. Went into 3 overtimes. Houston 37, UTSA 35. UTSA actually dominated this game for about 3 quarters, and then maybe 3.5 quarters, and Houston finally woke up and started playing. Houston's Tune, 22 for 32, 206 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 51 yards and a touchdown. Dell had 5 catches for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. Manjack had a touchdown catch for the Cougars. UTSA's Harris was 28 for 43, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, threw a pick. He also rushed for 63 yards and a touchdown. Cephas had 7 catches for 106 yards and a touchdown. Clark, 6 catches, 70 yards for 2 touchdowns for the Roadrunners. Yeah, UTSA dominated this game. It was 21-7 until the 4th. Houston outscored UTSA 17-3 in the 4th quarter to force overtime. Nebraska 38, North Dakota 17. Game was 7-7 at the half. Before this game was played, I figured Nebraska would win, but they were going to have trouble, the typical Nebraska troubles. At halftime, I figured Nebraska was going to lose. But Scott Frost chewed them out in the locker room at halftime, and they started playing better. But anyway, Nebraska's Anthony Grant ran for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was the highlight of the team. Nebraska scored on its opening possession and didn't score again until the 3rd quarter. They won, but they took the long road to do it, I'll tell you that. Marshall, 55, Norfolk State 3. Marshall was actually up 38-0 at halftime. Total dominance in Atlanta. Georgia 49, Oregon 3. I figured Georgia would win this game, but I figured Oregon would put up a fight and score some points, and they didn't. Georgia just dominated from opening kickoff till the last whistle blew. Bennett, 25 for 31, 368 yards, 2 touchdowns, also ran for a touchdown. Beck, he threw for 71 yards and a touchdown. Milton McIntosh, McConkey, all had rushing TDs. McConkey also caught a touchdown pass for Georgia. Bo Nix transfers to Oregon. He was 21 for 37, 173 yards, 2 interceptions. He was also the top rusher for Oregon with 37 rushing yards. Ferguson was the top receiver with 37 receiving yards. But yeah, complete domination from Georgia, start to finish. A lot of questions coming in this game about Georgia's defense. But Georgia's defense kind of proved that, hey, we're still here. I mean, they just swarmed all over Oregon. To be fair, though, this is the first game. We don't know how Oregon is going to be. So I try not to put too much stock into a first game because you're still cleaning up mistakes, cleaning up penalties, figuring out where your personnel are going to fit in best. So, um, who knows? Oregon might go 0-12, and then we'll know, well, it was kind of a pushover. Oregon could go 11-1. And then we know Georgia beat a damn good team. So, stock in the first game, yeah. Georgia had 571 total yards. Oregon ended up with 313 total yards. 2 overtime game. Wyoming 40, Tulsa 37. This is a 3-point game at halftime. Wyoming comes back and pulls it out at home. Oklahoma 45, UTEP 13. Gabriel for Oklahoma 15 for 23, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he also rushed for 2 touchdowns also. Major had 7 carries, 54 yards, 2 touchdowns. Mims, 81 receiving yards. Willis had 3 catches for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns. And for UTEP, Hardison was 26 for 42, 244 yards. Not too good of a day for UTEP. Cal 34, UC Davis 13. Plummer for Cal, 268 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Not too bad for them. Ole Miss 28, Troy 10. Ole Miss's Dart, 18 for 27, 154 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Evans had 20 carries for 130 yards in that one. South Alabama 48, Nicholls State 7. Nicholls didn't score until the 4th quarter in this one, so they were doomed from the start. Nevada 38, Texas State 14. This was actually a 7-point game at halftime. Nevada outscored Texas State 24-0 in the 3rd quarter. Ohio State with a tight one over FAU, 41-38. 4-point game at the halftime. Ohio outscored Florida Atlantic 14-0 in the 3rd, but Florida Atlantic outscored Ohio 21-14 in the 4th. So you see how they went back and forth? Georgia Southern 59, Morgan State 7. Morgan State scored their touchdown in the 2nd quarter. That was it. They were done. James Madison 44, Middle Tennessee 7. Centillo for James Madison, 287 passing yards, 6 touchdowns. Poor Rice, poor hometown Rice. USC 66, Rice 14. Williams for USC, 19 for 22, 249 yards, 2 touchdowns in that one. Another game. There are a lot of games with weather delays. BYU 50, South Florida 21, 2.5-hour weather delay. That one, the A&M game, and there's another one that had a weather delay. I forget. It was crazy. BYU's Hall, 25 for 31, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception in that one. This game was actually 38-7 at halftime. And BYU let South Florida, they decided to be nice and let South Florida score a couple. Baylor 69, Albany 10, the Albany Great Danes. Sharpen 17 for 20, 214 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown for Baylor. Coastal Carolina 38, Army 28. Vanderbilt 2-0 now. They beat Alien 42-31. Alien put up quite a fight though. Arkansas State 58, Grambling 3. Wisconsin 38, Illinois State 0. Mertz for Wisconsin, 14 for 16, 220 yards and a touchdown. Allen, 14 rushes, 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dyke had 3 catches for 107 yards and a touchdown. Liberty 29, Southern Miss 27. That one went into 4 overtimes. Auburn beat up on Mercer, 42-16. Finlay for Auburn, 9 for 14, 112 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions on that one. Kentucky 37, Miami of Ohio 13. Levis 21 for 32, 303 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception for Kentucky. Kentucky only have 50 total rushing yards. A lot of that had to do with, what's his name, Rodriguez that got suspended, which we still don't know why. Him and a bunch of other players got suspended from Kentucky. But that probably had a lot to do with them only having 50 total rushing yards. Robinson, though, he had 6 catches for 136 yards. Kansas State 34, South Dakota 0. This was 20-0 in the first. This game was all rushing for the Wildcats. They only had 96 total passing yards. Martinez was 11 for 15, 53 passing yards, but he rushed for a touchdown. Vaughn, 18 carries, 126 yards and a touchdown. Knowles, he had 75 rushing yards and a touchdown. Not all bad for South Dakota, though. Camp was 18 for 34, 139 yards. Did throw an interception, but numbers weren't all that bad for him. Louisiana 24, Southeast Louisiana 7. Fields had 173 passing yards and 2 touchdowns for Louisiana. Lumpkin had 5 catches for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Raging Cajuns. Tulane 42, UMass 10. Tulane's Pratt, 157 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Spears rushed for 62 yards on 14 carries and had 3 rushing touchdowns. UMass, horrible offense. Olsen only passed for 16 yards. Baldwin was the leading rusher with 62 yards. And Orlando was the leading receiver with 4 yards. So, UMass, horrible offense. All right, one that kind of shocked me here. Florida 29, Utah 26. Really thought Utah would win this game, just with all the kind of turmoil that went on with Florida since last November when they got rid of Mullen, brought in Billy Napier. But Florida proves they still got playmakers. Richardson, 17 for 24, 168 yards, rushed for 104 yards and 3 touchdowns on that one. Johnson, 77 rushing yards and a touchdown. Pearsall had 4 catches for 67 yards. Utah's Rising was 23 for 33, 220 yards, touchdown, threw an interception, but he also ran for 91 yards. Thomas, 23 rushes, 115 yards and a touchdown. Guthrie, 9 catches, 104 yards and a touchdown for Utah. Both teams played great in this one. Both teams moved the ball well. Florida had more success in the red zone, it looked like, than Utah did. Because Gators, all 3 trips to the red zone, they scored touchdowns. And then finally the Rising at the end there threw that pick in the end zone. That was it for them. Florida won. Overall, it's a pretty good game. Like I said, I expected Utah to win, but I was wrong. They lost. South Carolina 35, Georgia State 14. Rattler for South Carolina, 23 for 37, 236 yards, touchdown. Did throw 2 interceptions, though. Lloyd rushed for 30 yards and a touchdown and had a touchdown catch. Special teams in this one. Beamer Ball Jr. is back there. 2 block punts, returned for touchdowns for the Gamecocks. Fake field goal, ran for the first down. Beamer Ball's back, and I think people love it. Let's see. Mississippi State 49, Memphis 23. Rogers 37 for 48, 450 yards, 5 touchdowns in this one, and an interception. Marks ran for 2 touchdowns on 36 yards. Thomas had 5 catches, 81 yards for a touchdown. Ducking, 3 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown in that one. Memphis, Hennigan, 18 for 29, 162 yards, threw a touchdown pass, and he also ran for a touchdown. This one, pretty good defensive battle. Number 2, Ohio State 21, number 5, Notre Dame 10. Stroud was 24 for 34, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. Williams, 14 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Ejibuka, I can never say that guy's name. 9 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Johnson had a TD catch. Buchner for Notre Dame, 10 for 18, 177 yards, Uh, Estine, rushing yards and a touchdown. Ohio State, 223 passing yards, 172 rushing yards. Notre Dame, 177 passing yards, only 76 rushing yards in that one. Defensive game, but the offenses were sluggish most of the night. So, I don't know. If you're a defensive guy, that was your game. Pretty good. SMU 48, North Texas 10. Mordaki. 432 passing yards and 4 touchdowns for SMU. This one, Alabama 55, Utah State 0. Utah State's a good team. I really thought, I figured Alabama was going to win, but I figured Utah State would at least put up a fight. Not so much give Alabama a scare, but they would do enough to make Alabama look and say, hey, let's get this going. Let's get away from these guys. But man, Utah State just didn't do anything. Young for Alabama, 195 passing yards, 5 touchdowns in this one. Ran for 100 yards and a touchdown. Holden had 5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. Utah State, 57 passing yards, 79 rushing yards. 136 total yards in this game. Yeah, they just, man, I don't know. Because they'll probably go out to the mountain. Because Logan Bonner's a good quarterback. Utah State will go back out there to the Mountain West and dominate a lot of those games. But they just couldn't do anything against Alabama. Stanford 41, Colgate 10. McKee for Stanford threw for 308 yards and 2 touchdowns. Smith, 11 rushes, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns for Stanford. Texas 52, UL Monroe 10. Ewers for Texas, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he got his car towed from the stadium. Syracuse 31, Louisville 7. Schrader for Syracuse, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns in that one. Poor Maine Black Bears. They go play New Mexico and they lose 41-0. Texas Tech 63, Murray State 10. Smith for Tech, 221 yards and 4 touchdowns. Brooks rushed for 49 yards and 3 touchdowns in that one. And Bradley had 6 catches for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns in that one. Brings us to our last few games here. Washington State 24. The mighty Idaho Vandals 17. This game was 10-10 at halftime. Washington State's Ward, 236 yards and threw 3 touchdown passes. Idaho's McCoy didn't do too bad. 217 passing yards and a touchdown. I didn't know how this one would go. Oregon State 34, Boise State 17. Was Oregon State going to avoid the upset? Was Boise State, are they slowly working their way back to where they were? No, because they lost. It's like 24-0 at halftime. Oregon State's Nolan, 251 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Boise State's Green threw for 155 yards. He also ran for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Boise State's got themselves a pretty good quarterback there. Washington 45, Kent State 20. That Washington offense looked like the old Washington offense. Not that crap last year that Jimmy Lake had out there on the field. I mean, I know it's Kent State, but man, they moved the ball. They looked great doing it. Penix Jr. for Washington, 345 passing yards and 4 touchdowns in this one. McMillan had 5 catches for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kent State Schlee, 178 passing yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Washington offense looked pretty good. I don't know how they're going to be getting into their schedule more, but really, really precise looking offense. I was impressed. Hawaii drops her second one in a row, lose to Western Kentucky 49-17. Hawaii hero Timmy Chang, not looking too well for him right now. Okay, let's get to this game last night. Florida State 24, LSU 23. If you didn't see it, don't let that score fool you. LSU, first drive, looked really good. Last drive, looked really good. Everything in between was like, oh yeah, whatever. Whatever. Florida State's Travis was 20 for 33. He played an excellent game. 260 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ward led the rushing with only 49 rushing yards. Wilson, 7 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. LSU's Daniels, he looks like he's going to be a damn good quarterback if the offensive line can learn how to play. He was 25 for 39, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he also ran for 114. When that pocket collapsed, and it did a lot last night because the LSU's O-line is not very good, he could take off and he could run and he could get yardage. So LSU's got a good quarterback. They just need to protect him more and maybe design some more plays for him to run because he was a good-looking quarterback. Jenkins, 5 catches, 46 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like we said, LSU's first drive of the game looked great. Last drive of the game looked great. Everything in between was like, yeah, okay. Keyshawn Boutte was never really a factor in this. They only went to him a few times. I mean, that's your damn playmaker. That's the guy. But it's like he was non-existent most of the game. Like I said, O-line was horrible. Defense needs a lot of work. Special teams had 2 muff punts. Play calling was very questionable too. Like I said, they hardly used Boutte at all. In the play, I just didn't understand some of the play calling going on. Like we said, in between the first and last drive, it's just like, yeah. So they need to do something about that too. Florida State's Travis played great. Moved the offense down the field very well. Defense controlled the line of scrimmage. We saw that all night. And they won because LSU, in the last touchdown, the last few seconds, go to kick the extra point to tie it, to send it to overtime. And Shane Brown blocks the extra point. That would have tied the game and sent it to overtime. So, yeah. Wife's an LSU fan. She's pissed. I'm a secondary LSU fan because A&M is my team. The whole time I was like, what are y'all doing? I mean, who's calling these plays? So, LSU, they got potential, but they got a lot of work to do. They even started upstairs in the coaching booth. So we got one more tonight to end this great weekend. Clemson, Georgia Tech. Used to be a very good game from the mid-'90s to about the mid-2000s. That was a great game. It was usually back and forth. Probably not going to be like that tonight. I don't know what Georgia Tech's problem is the last several years. But, hey, it's a game to end the weekend until we get ready for next week. Thursday, the NFL starts. So there's like one college game. I forget who it is. It might not even be FBS. Might be FCS. So we got to wait till Friday to get college football going again. But we'll go over those games later in the week. Anyway, man, sun's finally coming out here. Y'all enjoy y'all's Labor Day. Back to work tomorrow. Sucks. But no, well, life, it is what it is. Anyway, have fun, and we'll see you back later in the week.